So today we're going to talk about the sad state of the Titanfall series. It's not looking good right now. We haven't had a new game in what, like 5 years? And Titanfall 1 and 2 are practically unplayable these days due to the widespread hacking problem those two games have, especially on PC. So the games that we do have are not very playable anymore, and we haven't had a new game in half a decade. If that's not a dead franchise, I don't know what is. And no, Apex Legends is not a fucking Titanfall game, okay? Seriously, there have been way too many times whenever the topic of Titanfall 3 has come up in discussions that people have said, well, we already have a Titanfall 3. It's called Apex Legends. I just throw up in my mouth whenever I hear anyone say that. I know Apex is set in the same universe as Titanfall, but that don't make it a Titanfall game. It's a spin-off at best. I mean, it literally doesn't have any Titans. How can it be a Titanfall game? But it's actually a really interesting thing to think about. You know, we've had Apex Legends for 2 years now, almost 3, and that game is still making a shit ton of money for EA and Respawn. And that success makes you wonder if that's the reason why we still don't have Titanfall 3. Because in May of this year, Apex Legends reached $1 billion in microtransaction revenue since the game's launch. $1 billion. Do you know that if you combine the sales of Titanfall 1 and Titanfall 2 together, it doesn't even come close to that number, which is sad because I think that Titanfall 1 and Titanfall 2 are two of the greatest FPS games that I've ever played. But they weren't very successful games. Now, I think that's mostly EA's fault because those are two really good games, nothing to do with the actual quality of the games themselves, but let's be honest, Titanfall 1 and Titanfall 2 were not financially successful. In the case of Titanfall 1, I think not putting it on PS4 was a big mistake. I know they took a shit ton of money from Microsoft to make it exclusive, but I think that actually hurt the game in the long run. And with Titanfall 2, it was released right in between the new Battlefield and the new Call of Duty that year. Two franchises that are way more established than Titanfall was at that point, so if people had to choose which game to buy, they were not going to choose Titanfall. That was a really stupid thing that EA did, releasing Titanfall 2 when they did, but what was even more stupid is that they did nothing with the game afterwards. They didn't try to build the game back up like what Ubisoft did with Rainbow Six Siege. That was a game that wasn't very successful when it first came out, but look at it now. They kept updating it and improving it, and now it's one of the biggest games in video game history. And I really feel like Titanfall 2 could have been that game too. Imagine if they gave the same love for Titanfall 2 as they have been with Apex. Just imagine. There was so much lost potential with the Titanfall franchise, and I do not consider Apex to be part of that franchise. And this video isn't meant for me to bash Apex and say, oh, Apex is a terrible game. No, but I think it definitely had a lot to do with the reason why we don't have Titanfall 3 right now, and also why it may never come. Because here we have Apex Legends, a game that had pretty much no marketing into it at all. It was released just randomly. There's no hype, no build-up, nothing. They just released it randomly, unannounced, and the game itself only cost a fraction of what it cost Respawn to make Titanfall 2. And the thing with Titanfall 1 and 2 is that we got Titanfall 1 in 2014, 2 years later we got the second Titanfall, but here we are almost 3 years into Apex, and it's still making them a shit ton of money. I think 2021 was Apex's most successful year so far. So not only does it cost less for them to make a Battle Royale type game like Apex as compared to a full-on multiplayer experience with a single-player campaign, which is what Titanfall 2 was, but at the same time, they don't have to make Apex Legends 2. With a game like Apex, they don't have to worry about making a sequel every 2 or 3 years, because the original game is still thriving. And it's definitely way more cost-effective to continue building upon a pre-existing title than to put another $100 million or whatever into a brand new game. So, not only is Apex making more money than Titanfall ever did, but it's also more cost-effective. EA's profit margins are much wider with a successful live service game. And it's the same thing with Rockstar Games. I know they're a different studio, but it's the same kind of thing that's going on with them. Where we've had GTA 5 for, what, 8 years already? They're going to release GTA 5 on 3 generations of consoles. The PS3, the PS4, PS5. And the reason why it's been so long since we've had a new GTA game is because Grand Theft Auto Online took on a life of its own, kind of like Apex did away from Titanfall. We might not get a GTA 6 until 2025 at least, and Grand Theft Auto has always been a successful franchise, so you take a thing like Titanfall that hasn't had nearly the amount of success as a Grand Theft Auto, as a Call of Duty, as a Battlefield, then the situation is even worse, because they see Titanfall as a financial risk. Yeah, Titanfall 3 is a game that a lot of people have been asking for years, but EA still sees it as a risk. They would see the $100–200 million that would go into the development of Titanfall 3, and would much rather use those resources to build up what they already have that is proven to be successful, unlike Titanfall. They'd rather take that budget used to make a Titanfall 3 and use it on a new Battlefield game, or the new FIFA game, or Apex Legends. They had Respawn make a Star Wars single-player game, Jedi Fallen Order, But the thing is, Star Wars is going to sell more than Titanfall ever will, let's be real. So they didn't see that as a huge risk, even though it was a single-player only game and EA really likes those online service games. It's a relatively safe bet that a game with the Star Wars name in it is going to make a shit ton of money. So they were fine with making that game, and in the case of Medal of Honor Above and Beyond, which is Respawn's most recent game, the VR Medal of Honor, EA saw more of a financial opportunity with that because how many FPS games do you have in VR, really? Not a whole lot of them. And take a series that already has some name value like Medal of Honor, and they thought that was a good opportunity for them too. Not to mention that Medal of Honor Above and Beyond, despite being a VR game, still only had a fraction of the cost that Titanfall 3 would have. So at the end of the day, what it comes down to is that EA is not confident that a Titanfall 3 would actually make them any money. But Apex is, and these free-to-play Battle Royale games are just making so much more money than a standard multiplayer experience. This is a trend that we're starting to see in the video game industry as a whole, where these studios are just chasing the trends. They're chasing the dollar signs. They're not caring about, like, what the actual fans think or anything like that. Because, you know, at the end of the day, they're a business, and they care about what makes them the most money, right? And right now, that's Apex Legends. Maybe we'd be having a different conversation if Titanfall 1 and 2 did better than they did, but at the same time, who knows if that's actually true? I mentioned GTA 5 earlier. That's an example of a game that didn't really need to have the online to begin with. It definitely would have stood very well on its own, just being a single-player experience. That's how it's been for so many years, but they still won't make GTA 6 because it costs less and it makes more money for them to just hold on to what they already have instead of starting from scratch and making something new. So that makes me think, what would have happened if Battlefield 5's Battle Royale mode, Firestorm, was actually successful and made a lot of money for EA? More money than the base game itself. What if? Really good show on Disney Plus, by the way. But seriously, what if Firestorm actually was a hit? I have a feeling that if that's how things played out, we'd be having a much different conversation about the Battlefield series right now. Instead of all of us getting hyped for the new Battlefield 2042, there's a good chance that EA might have held off on that if Firestorm actually was a big thing, and just keep focusing on that instead of the traditional Battlefield multiplayer. Maybe. I know with Call of Duty, Warzone's been a huge thing, and that's taken away a little bit from the multiplayer, but they're still releasing new games every single year because people keep buying them. So with COD, it's a little bit different, I guess, but I did make a whole video about how Battle Royale ruined Call of Duty, because it definitely did. We got less of a focus on traditional 6v6 multiplayer and more of a focus on Battle Royale. What these companies are going to do, they're going to do what they do best, which is make as much money as they possibly can. And EA probably feels like Titanfall 3 would get in the way of that. And I think what's very likely to happen is that we're going to see Star Wars Battlefront 3 probably in the next year or two, and 5 years from now, we're still going to be asking the question, where is Titanfall 3? Is it ever coming? I don't know if it ever will. I hope I'm wrong, but it's not looking good, especially if Apex Legends continues to print money for EA. Why rock the boat, right? But I want to know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Do you think that Apex Legends is a big reason as to why we don't have Titanfall 3? And do you think that we'll ever get Titanfall 3? That's it for me. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you guys later. Peace.